Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third Thinking Forwards conversation. My name is Jenny Richards, and I am the chair of the English Association. The English Association is the only body in the UK that works across all educational sectors in English studies. We provide opportunities for cross-sector exchange and thinking forwards about our subject for everyone. Expect to see more initiatives from the English Association like this one today. For example, a new English Association or EA hub led by Becky Fisher and Harvey Wiltshire to foster exchange between teachers and academics in English studies. And on our website, there are plenty of cross-sector resources on applications data on careers, skills for the future, and on emerging topics like oracy, as well as our most recent report on GCSE reform. Now, we don't work alone as a subject body. We work with the Institute for English Studies and University English and our fellow disciplines in the arts and humanities, including modern languages, which is especially relevant to today's conversation. At the heart of this series is a topic of collaboration. We want to understand and celebrate all kinds of collaboration with teachers in schools, with the GLAM sector, and with other disciplines, both within the humanities and with sciences. This particular project, we are collaborating with the Institute for English Studies and the School of Advanced Study, who will help us broaden this work as part of their campaign for the humanities, not least by recording professional videos with our speakers and by building a database of multidisciplinary collaborations. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our three speakers today, all from Newcastle University. Jennifer Arnold is a lecturer in Spanish and Translation Studies in the School of Modern Languages. Lara Kelland is a final year undergraduate student in Modern Languages and Translation and Interpreting. And Philippa Page is a senior lecturer in Latin American Cultural Studies and the co-director of the Humanities Research Institute. They will speak for about 5 minutes each, introducing us to the idea and experience of what they call a Challenge Lab. I will then ask them a couple of questions, which I have shared in advance, and we will have time for your questions too. So please do pop them in the chat as we go. Nothing more to say, I think, from me, but over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jenny. And thank you, Elizabeth, for the invitation today to talk a little bit more about Challenge Labs. Challenge Labs, which in the most sort of basic definition of the term, is a space that is collaborative, that is interdisciplinary, where any member of the university, any person comes together because they have a shared challenge in common, and they find a way to work together to address that challenge from their different disciplinary perspectives and training. So I'm going to give a little bit of a taster to some of the very different challenge labs that we've tested out over the last couple of years, and they've really sort of been developed or been developing a model for a new way of approaching scholarship organically and sort of led our thinking in that way. So what happens when students from music, from English literature, from medicine, architecture, business and neuroscience, along with the opera company Opera North, explore audience experiences of opera through various methods, including neuroscience? Well, we begin to understand how the bodily experience of attending a performance relates to how we describe that experience in words and how we bring that experience into language. We begin to understand the health benefits of a night at the opera. We also begin to develop the evidence base that will be needed to support the case for social prescription, arts therapy, and the culture and creative industry's vital role in supporting our health and well-being. In another instance, we asked what happens when chemists, sociologists, political scientists, and creative writers reimagine Primo Levi's carbon chapter of the periodic table in the face of the climate emergency. The original text was written in 1975. We start to make visible and palpable our ever precarious relationship to the material world. We start to question how this relationship is also conditioning our own inertia in response to this crisis. And then we question the ways in which science is complicit in histories and contemporary realities of extractivism. But that takes us on to discussing the extractive logic of our own methods of textual analysis, which is the method we start this challenge lab with, mining a text for meaning. So we experiment with new ways of critically and creatively bringing Levi's work into the present through a collaborative storytelling that empowers individual voices while making them responsible to a collective creation that emerges. So we realized that experimenting with new collaborative methods can actually generate social innovation in the way we work along the way. It's not so much, or in this challenge lab, it's not so much about the final poem or the final output, as we like to call it in the research world. It's really about what is transformed in the process of exploring the carbon chapter and coming up with our reimagined version. What happens then in another instance when students from business, zoology, international relations and law set the agenda for a public lecture on intergenerational justice? The speaker responds directly and spontaneously to their provocation, putting into practice the intergenerational justice that he has written about in theory so often. The brilliant minds of the future take the lead in shaping this particular discussion. They hold us to account as they do because they say we're not working in a sustainable or an equitable way. So as this challenge lab unfolds, the intergenerational relationship at the heart of learning, which is often sort of so hierarchical or can slip into this unidirectional dynamic, is redefined through an ethics of care and a spirit of reciprocity. Everyone becomes a researcher and everyone remains a student. No one has all the answers, and the expert is not the protagonist of a heroic narrative who comes in with all the answers to save the day. But we realize that working together, we become greater than the sum of our individual experience and expertise. And we really manage to kind of capture and understand the challenge, in this case, the challenge of intergenerational justice, in all its complexity and its textures through all those different perspectives that come together. The young scholars, who are our co-researchers, build the confidence to read and to write the world on and in their own terms. And the final sort of teaser or taster is what happens when students from medicine, biosciences, cultural studies, languages and translation come together with international NGO Lingua Pax about the pressing issue of language revitalization and multilingualism, both as keystones of social and environmental justice. As the discussion unfolds, we're confronted with the fact that deciding not to learn another language because everyone understands English anyway, which is a common phrase that we hear, is actually exercising the privilege of not having to make the effort to learn how to communicate in another language. The privilege, it's exercising the privilege also of sort of retreating from meaningful and equitable intercultural exchange. We also learn from those, and there are many of them in the group, who do work in English as a second language, or indeed as those who work with English as one of their many first languages, that they regard English more as a skill. And there we grapple with a conundrum. The decision to untether the global lingua franca from its controversial cultural and historic roots is both political and emotional. It's understandable, but at the same time, we're asking ourselves that thinking of English as a skill risks further hiding the difficult histories in which the language is inextricably bound. We don't solve that conundrum, but we lay bare its textures and its existence. So these are all snippets that represent some of the challenge labs that we have convened over the past few years that connect people who might not otherwise have the opportunity to work together because they don't necessarily realise that they share common challenges or common problems that they would like to address, but would choose to address in very different ways. Each of them is developed very organically, taking its own pathway, but hopefully the taste has given a little bit of the diversity of the projects that we've done together. So across these experiences, they're very different, but a pattern has started to emerge, which might be briefly summarised as follows, and it sort of gives us the ingredients to develop a model for collaborative interdisciplinary learning, co-learning together. First, we start to appreciate the limits of our existing approaches to scholarship, and there are many. That it's all very well staying in the zone of comfort and the familiarity of our own disciplines, but that learning becomes stifled when we do so. Second, we see clearly that knowledge is a continuum rather than a neat set of silos. Challenge labs do illuminate the value of our disciplinary training, but they do so relationally. And as they do so, they encourage us to really reflect and think about what they train us not to notice. And I think that's one of the key ingredients in this convening of interdisciplinary experience and expertise, is that we come together in the spirit of not what the expertise that I'm bringing to the table, but I want to learn what my expertise teach me not to notice, and how can I work with others in order to illuminate the problem and the challenge a little bit more holistically. So the latter is also important because it acts as a leveler within the group. So we're not experts, but we're there to understand what we're taught not to see. And that creates a more comfortable, a less intimidating and a more inclusive space for students to feel supported and empowered, with the confidence to ask the questions that matter to them most. And finally, it encourages us to value other ways of working. We can give ourselves the time, the space, and the permission to be curious, to digress, to work through a problem more slowly, and to fail along the way. So together, what these learning experiences have done is that they've started to give us the coordinates for both a one community approach to learning, and also the coordinates to an interdisciplinary future that's pedagogically, conceptually, ethically, and methodologically. So it sort of scaffolds what a model for that collaborative learning might be. And as we engage with the complexity and messiness of real world problems through these challenge labs, and these are problems to which there are no simple or neatly contained solutions, we start to map out the literacies of the future. We start to explore what they might look like. And as we do, we start to explore what global citizenship, digital citizenship, and climate citizenship will mean. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Lara and to Jenny, who are going to talk about in a little bit more detail, one specific experience of a challenge lab that they have done.
Thank you.